Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to talk about modeling multiplication of fractions. I'm going to start with repeated addition and then we're going to talk about how you can model it using area. And I've got my handy dandy ruler here. I'm in my sewing room, so I have all this different equipment we can use to help us model area. So first let's start with 3.5, 2 times 3.5. Which we should know is 7, because all you have to do to figure out that 2 times 3.5 is 7 is do 3.5 plus 3.5. If you have money, $3.50 plus $3.50, it's $7. It's $7. $3.50, $3.50. You have $3 plus $3, and then you add up the $0.50 and the $0.50, now you have $7. Let's model this using an object, because kids are not usually going to understand as well as you guys do about money. So we can start with 3.5 stars. If we want to model this using, if we want to model the multiplication using the stars, we can say, all right, 2 times 3.5 would be if I had 2 sets of these stars. If I wanted to do 3 times 2.5, I would have 3 sets of stars. That's 3 times 2.5. And I could add one more set of stars for 4 times 2.5. But for here, let's just do 2.5 times 3, or 3 times 2.5. 2.5 times 2, or 2 times 2.5. There we go. Sorry. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 whole stars. And then if you take half a star plus half a star, that's one more star. So what we've got is 2 rows, 3.5 stars in each row, and we have 6 whole stars plus 1 star, 7 stars. So that's your object modeling. Now let's talk about how we can model this using area. So you'll notice that I pasted in a little tape measure here, just like this ruler. So I've got my, got my ruler here, and this is the same as the tape measure, right? So I'm going straight along the ruler. I'm never, let's go the other way. I'm going straight along the ruler. I'm not going straight and then down, right? To get the area of a 2 by 3.5 inch rectangle, you go 2 inches along the side. Let's go 2 inches along the side, but it doesn't matter, side or length. And then 3.5 inches along the top. So when you're going along the top, you don't go, it has to be a rectangle, right? So when you're doing the area model, the result has got to be a rectangle. And here you see 1, 2, 3 whole squares. Here's my half square where I stopped at the ½ inch mark, right? The 3.5, this is 3.5, halfway between 3 and 4. And then 4, 5, 6 whole squares, and here's my second 1/2. And so I have 6 whole squares and 2 half squares. That's 1 more whole, that's 7 whole squares. Now finally, the last way I want to show you is using partial products, which is like the distributive property. So with the distributive property, I would do 2 times 3.5 by doing 2 times 3 plus 1/2. So I would do 2 times the 3, and then 2 times the 1/2. So here's the 2 times 3, and here's the 2 times 1/2. The only kind of question you might have there is, why is 2 times 1/2 equal to 1? So let's just talk about that for a second. So you would see 2.5, 2 times 1/2. Sorry, it's not 2.5. It's 2 times 1/2. 2.5 is 2 plus 1/2. You would see 2 times 1/2 written like this normally, right? But it's easier to see why it equals 1 if you write the first fraction over 1. So 2 is the same as 2 over 1, because 2 divided by 1 is 2. And here's my 1/2. And the rule for fractions is that you should multiply straight across the top. So you multiply 2 times 1, sorry, little beep there, and then you multiply straight across the bottom, 1 times 2. So when you multiply straight across the top, you get 2. 2 times 1 is 2. Straight across the bottom, 1 times 2 is 2. And then 2. over 2? Well, 2 over 2 is 1. So that's why that part of it, we get 6 plus 1 is 7, because you have 2 times 1/2. So just a little reminder about partial products. Remember when we did a number like 35 times 2? We would do 30 plus 5. Well, the same as 3.5 times 2. We do 3 plus 1/2 and then times the 2. And you notice how similar the answers look. 35 times 2 is 70. 3.5 times 2 is 7. That's because 3.5 is the same as 3.5. And you could just do that multiplication, you get 7, just like I do when I do 3.5 times 2. But right now, because the earlier grades are more about decimals, I'd like you more about fractions and not about decimals. I'd like you to focus on working in fraction form in this part of the unit. All right, see you in the next video.